Hey guys, welcome to this week's Dennis Kirk Tech Tip. With the dirt bike, the things that you can count on wearing out for sure are the tire and the chain and sprocket. So replacing your chain and sprocket is kind of a daunting task for those who are not that mechanically inclined, but it's not too tough of a task. This week we're going to replace the chain and sprocket on our Kawasaki KX 450 SR with high quality chain and sprocket from our friends at Sunstar, available at denniskirk.com. Now, through the magic of Hollywood, I'm going to magically transform from a middle-aged Japanese man into a good-looking white guy that's a little bit shorter than me.
Okay, it's me, Jay Clark. We're going to give you some tips on this right now. We're going to start with the tools you'll need to do the job right. Okay, so of course you want to make sure you have a chain. Most chains come in 120 length for all the big bikes, so that they're long, you can cut them to length, and that way if you change gearing, some people worry that it's a hassle cutting the chain. It's not that big a deal. We got a cool tool here that we're going to use. You can also grind them to cut them. There's different ways you can do that. Got a new front sprocket. I have a sprocket holder, which you don't have to have, but it really helps make the job a little easier. Don's going with the stock gearing here. So we got the 1350 with a new chain. I got wrenches for the chain adjustment when we're going to need to move it in, and then adjust the chain properly when we're done. Hammer, screwdriver, Masterlink pliers from Motion Pro, ratchet. We got our gun and socket for the front sprocket. I think that's most of the tools we're going to need. Loctite. We like to run blue on the front sprocket nut and a low on the sprocket bolts and nuts. The first thing I like to do is remove the chain. If you want to loosen your sprocket bolts while it's on the bike, this would be the time to do that. You could hold the rear brake, or you can just slap each one. I like to just pull the wheel off and do it up on my tire stand. And same thing for the front sprocket removal. This would be the time to remove it right now if you don't have the special tool. You could hold the rear brake on while doing that. Don't leave it in gear. So I like to break the sprocket nut, the axle nut loose here. And I just leave my hardware right here where I'm gonna come right back to it. And then I can just pull the axle out. This is a good time to grease your axle and clean it first and then grease it. So at this point we can go get this up on our wheel stand and we'll pull the sprocket off. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the cover here to get to the front sprocket. And as you can see, this guard has a little piece behind here. You'll want to keep track of all that. We can put all that back on here in a second. Now Kawasaki has a flat bent over washer here to kind of added security to for your front sprocket coming loose. And so I got a junky screwdriver here that I've had for years that I kind of use. You can use a chisel different ways. Ideally, if you damage this, you could change this washer out. But usually you could get a couple sprocket changes with it without it getting too bad. Now, like I said, if you had left the chain on, you could hold the rear brake down with the chain on and be able to do this with the chain on. I have a cool tool here to hold the front sprockets. There's a few different ones. And so I can hold the front sprocket like that. Then I can get our air impact gun. If they're really tight or Loctite on, we can use some heat on there. Hopefully we don't need to. Just like so. We're going to pull that off. And when you pull your sprocket off, it's good to, some sprockets are offset different ways. I always pull it off and kind of make sure that this one is just symmetrical. This side has a cutout, so I'm going to put that same cutout side back in just as it was. Place our washer on. Now in this case, I'm going to use some blue Loctite, just like that. And when we take this off, we probably will have to use a heat next time we go to do it. Not much worse than losing a front sprocket. Okay, so we use 3 Uga Chugas with our air compressor setting. At this point, it would be good if just check your stock torque specs, and you can torque it to your stock torque specs from your manual. With a punch like this, I can kind of get like on here on it, and I'll get one more spot on this side. And if you use a screwdriver, it can kind of get some cuts in it, so that's why I like to just use a flat surface. So now we got enough holding it on here and here so this thing can't move, and it's held in place with those grooves. So we're in good shape, ready to get our cover back on and get to finishing the rest of this job. So putting this piece on can be a little tricky, and this is because these guards, in the old days we would get rid of these guards, but with this new hydraulic clutch here on these bikes, it's probably best to keep it. So you got to keep that little plate in the back guided on, and it can be upside down, as I just found out a second ago. So you want to make sure that it's going the right way. It won't fit on the wrong way. It just won't line up. So get those good and snug. Just don't have to over tighten those. Okay, and our bike's still in neutral. Let's go get that rear sprocket done. It's nice having two people. I got a good assistant here who can spin the wrench on top, and I can put it right on my tire stand, which is nice. If someone doesn't have these tire stands and would like to get their own, to make their own, if they got a welder buddy, they can email me at Dirt Bike TV. You can find our email and get with us, and we'll send you the drawings for free. Okay, back to work here. I wouldn't call it a commercial. It was more of a public service announcement because there's no cost. So it wasn't like a real commercial. Okay, there's been so many people make our tire stands, and they're useful for things like this as well as changing tires, obviously. So the guy on the bottom with the wrench is the one that's kind of moving the one on top is just holding it steady. And then this one, the wrench, is what's moving the nut, and then he can then spin it, and I got my hands down here grabbing it, and see how fast we got that off. So it's a really fast process to do it that way.
Some of them need heat.
Yeah, so if guys have a lot of Loctite, then you'll need some heat. Now we use a low Loctite, and one of the tricks we do is we put Loctite on this surface right here, which not many people know to do. I learned that from some of the race teams, and Spencer's gonna feed those washers and nuts on. So I'm gonna put Loctite on here and Loctite on here, and I'm using low Loctite. And the reason we put it on both surfaces, it kind of locks it in place, literally. Just drop it on like that, so it locks it in both places. And we've had really good results doing it this way. It's probably been 15 years I've been doing it this way, and we have not lost a single sprocket bolt. And when you do have some of these loosen up, it can be catastrophic with damage to a lot of things. If you wipe out your hub, you could crash. So really a bad scenario. Okay, so now at this point, I'm kind of going to do the same thing. I'm going to hold this wrench and just hold it steady till he gets it good and snug, and then I'm going to be the one tightening it with the nut, and he just holds it steady. Like I said, if you don't have an assistant to do this, then I would suggest doing it on the bike. You loosen them on the bike and then get it up on the bench to finish it. And when you loosen them on the bike, you can leave the chain on longer than I did. I get it off straight away and just do it this way, because we're really pretty fast and efficient at this system. Just good like that. And you don't want to over tighten these too, because you can be stretching your bolts out. So it's just good and tight, good and snug with that thread locker on there, and we're good. Now we're going to do a little added step. Since we're going to have our chain adjuster bolts, we have to mess with them anyway and do it. One of the worst things that can happen to your swing arm is these bolts get stuck, and that happens over time. So what I like to do is coat them with some anti-seize or grease. If you don't have any, grease is just fine, but coat them, and then this should last you a long time, a couple years, depending upon where you live. And then I back the nuts off a little bit, so that way when we get in here, we should have enough room to size up our chain. Okay, we like to sit down to put the wheel on just because we're used to it, and we can use our feet to guide it into the brake pad. See how quickly and easily it goes on there? Also, like I said, this would be a good time to clean up your axle and grease it. We already did that, so that's ready to go. Now we can get our wheel on, and we're just gonna put the nut on loose so that we're ready to start checking out where we want to cut our chain at. Because now we have our chain run on here, and we have our wheel kind of loose. Pull the wheel back, so you can pull the wheel back, and you want to make sure, see this gap right here. Once you get to here, you're not going to ever be able to adjust it any further when you're back here. So you're going to kind of try to find a medium place you like. The further back it is, the bike's less likely to maybe wheelie a little bit, that little distance. Some of those changes, a lot of us can't tell. but top pro supercross guys can tell some of those changes where they want that in relation. I like it to be in the middle or a little bit forward of middle, typically. Okay, so here we're going to be really far forward, and it leaves us room to be able to have plenty of adjustment. The downside to this is if you ever want to run a larger sprocket, you're not going to have room with this same chain. So if that's an option for you, I would go back to the next spot. I know Don's going to stick with this 50, so we should be good right here. I want to make sure that I'm not stuck on a half link. A half link would be something like this. You want to make sure that you're at a full link right here. So I know I'm going to cut this one right here. So I'm going to hold that now, and I know I'm going to cut right there. So I'm going to grab my tool here. This is you can get it from Dennis Kirk directly, as Don's told me here. And you just start cranking like this. Now, the big key to this is, once you start moving it at all, so we come in here, you can see where we started to move it. It's starting to break. You got to stop immediately, back it off, and then go over to the other side. That's the big mistake people make with these types of chain tools, is going too far on the one, and you heard it just crack, it goes crack. And so you're breaking the pin there. So now you can see, now I'm uneven here. So now I want to back it off again, and I'm going to switch over to the other side again, just like this. Now we're pretty much all the way off. So it just took a couple switching back and forth, and our chain's in good shape. So you put your master link in and then your plate on. Now this chain's much easier than an X-ring or an O-ring chain. You don't have to press anything. So it's a pretty simple chain, lightweight. They don't last as long as like a O-ring, but a lot lighter. So here we go. And these, like I said, these pliers are really cool, like this. Just like that. Now we're gonna do our final chain adjustment. I'm gonna bring in my assistant that doesn't need to wear glasses to do this final adjustment. Okay, so that's some keys to help you. Hopefully that helps you out. We'll bring in the guy that really makes this happen right now.
So there you guys have it. Chain and sprocket installation made easy thanks to our guy, Jay Clark. He did exactly the way I would have done it myself. Anyway, Sunstar Sprockets, Motion Pro tools, and the Drag Specialties chain breaker, all available at denniskirk.com. Thanks for watching.
For more information on the products shown in this video, click on the link in the description box below. Feel free to call us with any questions or place an order at 800-969-7501. Don't forget to smash that like button, comment, share, and subscribe.